The maids whispered again that morning. You heard them before you entered the hall, their hushed voices bouncing off the marble floors. I swear he doesn't let her lift a finger. One sat folding linens nervously. That's not love. The other whispered, that's obsession. You stepped in before they noticed you. The moment they saw you, both froze head spots. You could feel it, the weight of being Mrs. Joan. Every step you took carried his name, his power, his shadow. Your husband ruled the city from behind tinted glass and bulletproof walls. And yet, inside these walls, he ruled quietly through gestures that felt both loving and terrifying. The double doors to the dining hall opened before you wouldn't touch them, a guard board as you passed. The entire penthouse smelled of sandalwood and rain, his favorite. Jungkook sat at the end of the long glass table, black shirt unbuttoned at the collar, sleeves rolled to his forearms, papers lay untouched in front of him. He looked up as you entered, eyes dark, unreadable, but soft for a fraction of a second. Without word, he stood and walked toward you. You're late. You said dinner was at 8. It's 8:02. You roll your eyes, but he caught your wish before you could sit. He reached up, fixing the diamond clasp of your necklace that had slipped slightly. His fingers brushed your skin, slow, deliberate. You look like trouble, my kind of trouble. You tried not to shiver, but he noticed, he always noticed. Dinner was silent, except for the soft clinking of silver against porcelain. He didn't ask if you were hungry. He had already had your favorite dish prepared, lemon risotto, the way you liked it. The chef never dared to serve you anything else unless he approved it first. When your hand reached for the wine bottle, his voice came low but commanding. I'll pour it. You looked up at him, slightly annoyed. You really think I can manage a glass of wine, Jungkook? He raised a brow, calm, unreadable. No, I just prefer the word to remember that you don't have to. He filled your glass, his ring glinting in the candlelight. That quiet dominance was his language, never loud, never cruel, but suffocatingly gentle. Later that night, you sat by the fire wrapped in his coat while he finished a call with one of his men. You didn't understand much, only pieces. Words like shipment, territory, betrayal floated through the room. He ended the call, silence filling the space again. His gaze found you tired, maybe, but warm in the dim firelight. You shouldn't stay up this late, neither should you. He smiled faintly, stepping closer. Difference is, I'm built for sleepless nights, you are not. He brushed your hair back, fingers squeezing your cheek, gentle, almost reverent. You treat me like I'm fragile. You are. Everything else in my world breaks easily. You don't. That was the paradox of him. He could destroy nations but still make you sit by the fire because your hands were cold. Sometimes when you laughed rare as it was he had go completely silent, you would catch him watching you across the room. Eyes softened, lips parted just enough to look human again. But he never smiled, he just watched, memorizing you like he was afraid you would vanish. And outside those tall glass walls, the city bowed to him, ruthless, merciless, untouchable. But inside this mansion, he was different. Still cold, still controlling, yet every action screamed the one thing he never said aloud. You were the only thing that made his empire feel alive. The room was heavy with silence, that kind of silence that feels like it's holding its breath before the storm. He sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the faint reflection of the city lights through the rain. Behind you, Jungkook was freezing, his phone pressed to his ear, his voice smooth but clipped. No one moves until I say so. I want her followed discreetly, not a shadow too close, not a step too far. If anyone touches her, they disappear. Understood? You turn slowly. You are tracking me again, or not you? He froze, the phone in his hand went still, then without looking at you, he sat for your safety. No, Jungkook, for your control. The thunder cracked outside, perfectly timed. You stood crossing your arms, your voice trembled, not with fear, but with exhaustion. You have got guards outside every door. My phone's bugged. My friends don't even call anymore because you made them disappear from my life. What do you think I am? A prisoner you bought? He finally turned toward you, eyes cold, stone frighteningly calm. You think the world out there is kind wide? It only respects you because you wear my name. Your laugh was hollow. No, Chungu. The world fears me because it fears you, and I'm tired of living in that shadow. His jaw flexed the first crack in his composure. He stepped closer, voice dropping to that dangerous whisper. Every threat I have buried was because of you. Every man I have silenced was because they looked at you wrong. You call that control, I call that protection. Protection isn't locking me in a golden cage. The air snapped, his hand clenched around the glass of whiskey he had been holding. For a second he looked down and then it shattered in his fist, blood dripping between his fingers. He didn't even flinch. Better me than you. That broke something in you. You stepped back, shaking your head, tears burning behind your eyes. You can't protect me from everything, Jungkook. Not from the loneliness, not from you. He stared at you, still. Then his voice turned low, almost quiet. If you leave, don't expect me to come after you. You swallowed hard, the lie burned between you both, then don't. And you walked away. Past the guards who hesitated to stop you, down the marble staircase, through the rain that poured like the sky itself was weeping for him. Behind you, he didn't move. He just stood there, bleeding, silent, staring at the door you had just closed. The rain never really stopped after that night. It followed you soft and endless, like the sky was craving for everything you had left behind. You had escaped Seoul with a single suitcase, some cash you had hidden years ago, and a heart that refused to stop hurting. The train ride was quite long and heavy with guilt. Every time the doors slide open, you expected to see his men, black swords, silent eyes, but they never came. By dawn, you arrived in a coastal town. The streets were narrow, the sea visible at every turn, and nobody cared who you were. That's why you stayed. Now, a month later, your life was reduced to a rhythm, small, safe, and nothing like the life you had as Mrs. Jones. You worked at a cafe near the harbor, the kind that only locals visited. You wore an apron with a stitched name tag, Lena. When customers called you that, you still hesitated. You were not used to being someone unimportant. Mornings were quiet. You woke before sunrise, the smell of coffee and sewage drifting in through the cracked window. Sometimes, when the ocean roared too loud, you imagined it was the echo of distant gunfire, the sound of his world without you. You avoided mirrors, you avoided the news, you avoided anything that reminded you of him, which meant avoiding everything. Still at night, you dreamed of him, not the ruthless mafia lord, the word feared, but the man who wrapped his coat around you when you shivered, the man you poured your wine like it was a ritual, and when you woke, your pillow was always damp. The city changed after you left. Headlines spoke in whispers, afraid of printing his name. Unexplained city lockdown continues, trade routes frozen, ports under private authority. No official statement from June Enterprises. No one dared to say that everyone knew that June Jungkook, the man who ruled the underworld, had lost his queen. The mansion that once thronged with quiet power was now lifeless. The chandeliers remained lit, but the light felt wrong, too bright against the emptiness. Jungkook barely left his office. The curtains were always drawn, the floor lighted with cigarette ash and untouched meals. He hadn't slept in days. On his desk were photos, satellite captures, surveillance stills. Every woman with dark hair and your height had been tracked, followed, questioned. None were you. Each failure made him quieter, colder. He stopped answering calls from other families. He stopped attending meetings. He stopped existing except to order one thing: find her. He said it every morning, every night, over and over. When his men hesitated, too afraid to ensure, he had lifted his gaze, and that was enough to make them obey. Hyung was right hand man finally dared to speak one night. Hyung, we have checked every safe house, every contact, every city block. She's gone. Jungkook didn't look up. Then expand, lock down every border, freeze every shipment. I want the city to stop breathing until she's found. The city suffocates, and so it did. Trucks were stopped mid route, ships were turned back from the docks. No one could enter or leave without his clearance. It was as if the entire city had become a cage not for you, but for him. His empire began to bleed quietly. Rivals whispered, "He's losing his mind, all this over one woman." The queen leaves, the king crumbles. They didn't understand you were not one woman, you were the only piece of light in a world built entirely of shadows. Back to you, you felt that somehow the way he was unraveling, some invisible thread still tied you to him. Every time you closed the cafe, the ocean wind reminded you of the scent of his calling cedar and smoke. Every time someone slammed a door, you flinched, waiting to hear his footsteps behind you, and sometimes you missed him so much it physically hurt. You had found yourself standing at the edge of the bar, staring at the horizon, whispering his name like a secret. You said you wouldn't come after me. The wind stole your words, but your heart whispered the rest. But I know you will, because no matter how far you ran, you belonged to him in ways even freedom couldn't undo. 3 weeks after your disappearance, Jungkook stopped pretending. He was in his office again, tie loose, bloodshot eyes fixed on a map of the coast. The young stood across from him, hesitant. Sir, if she didn't want to be found. Jungkook's voice was hoarse, broken. She does. She just doesn't remember how to ask for me. He pressed his palms against the table, breathing slowly, the calm before something catastrophic. Then, quietly, almost to himself, she said she didn't want my cage, then I'll burn the cage and everything inside it. And somewhere far away in that small coastal town, you woke up from a dream, heart pounding, tears slipping down your cheeks. You didn't know why, but you could almost feel him getting closer. The air felt heavier that morning. The waves hit the shore harder, and for the first time since you ran, you felt afraid. Because deep down you knew one thing: when John Chunguk finally found you, he wouldn't just ask you to come home. He would make the world stop until you did. The bell above the cafe door chimed for the first time that night. You switched off the lights, the warm glow fading until only the street lamp outside remained. Rain pressed against the windows in soft, endless sheets. The town was asleep, the sea roared in the distance. You stepped out with your umbrella, locking the door behind you. The smell of salt and wet pavement wrapped around you, peaceful, steady, until you noticed it. A shadow at the far end of the street, still unmoving, waiting. At first, you thought it was another customer who had forgotten something. But then the lightning flashed and your heart stopped. Jungkook stood there in the rain, black suit soaked through, hair plastered to his forehead. He didn't carry any umbrella. He didn't try to move closer. He just looked at you as if he hadn't seen daylight in weeks. For a moment, you couldn't breathe. Every instinct told you to turn away, to run back inside, but your feet didn't listen. You took a hesitant step forward. Jungkook, he blinked slowly, as though hearing your voice physically hurt. His jaw tightened, then without a word, he dropped to his knees on the wet ground. The sound of it, the weight of a man like him kneeling, was louder than the thunder. He froze, rain rolled down his face like tears he refused to shed. His hands, usually steady and sure, trembled slightly as they pressed against the pavement. You win. His voice cracked under the storm. No power, no empire, nothing matters if you're not in it. The umbrella slipped from your grip, crashing beside you. You were drenched within seconds, yet you barely felt it. All you could see was him, your husband, the man the world feared, broken, raw, human. Why would you come here? Jungkook lifted his eyes to you, and in them was a kind of grief you had never seen before. Because I can command cities wine, but never my heart when it comes to you. You shook your head, tears mixing with the rain. You shouldn't have done this. You said you wouldn't come after me. I know, his voice was barely a whisper, but every night without you felt like punishment. I thought if I lost you, I could survive it. I was wrong. The storm roared harder. His suit clung to him, dark and heavy, but he didn't move. He stayed kneeling, head bowed, as if the earth itself had taken him hostage. You can't keep me by force, Jungkook. You can't protect me by controlling me. He met your gaze, desperation and understanding warring inside him. Then let me try again. I'll protect you differently. Not behind walls beside you. I don't know how to be that man yet, but I'll learn if you let me. You stared at him, the rain muting the word into a single heartbeat. What if you wanted to step back into the quiet life you had built? But the other part, the foolish, aching part now, the man kneeling before you and realized he had already surrendered everything that made him untouchable. Slowly, you reached for him, your fingers brushed his cheek, cold from the rain. His breath hitched for the first time in weeks. His shoulders loosened. Get up, Jungkook. He looked at you, uncertain, almost afraid. Please. He rose slowly, water dripping from his sleeves, eyes never leaving yours. When he was finally standing, you both stood there in the downpour, two people who had lost everything except each other. He took a step closer, voice rough. Come home with me. You didn't answer right away, you just slipped your hand into his, fingers trembling but certain. The rain softened somewhere far away, thunder rolled out to sea. The drive back to Seoul was silent. The city, once roaring with chaos, now lay still as if even it knew its king had fallen to his knees. The rain had thinned into mist, ghosting across the glass as the car rolled through empty streets. You sat beside Jungkook, neither of you speaking. His hand rested on his thigh, inches away from yours, not daring to reach. Every few seconds you had glanced at him. The hollowed eyes, the raw exhaustion. For the first time, Jungkook looked mortal. When the car stopped outside the mansion, you almost didn't recognize it. The lights were dim, the gates half open. The guards bowed their heads, avoiding your gaze as if they knew this was something sacred, fragile. Inside, the marble floor gleamed faintly under the grey dawn. Everything was quiet, no footsteps, no orders, no sound but the echo of your heels. Chunguk followed a step behind, silent until you turned to him. You look like you haven't slept in days. He gave a faint, humorless laugh. I haven't. Sleep doesn't come easy when the only peace you ever had walks out the door. You swallowed, unsure what to say. The words between you felt fragile, like glass one wrong move and everything would shatter again. He stepped closer, slowly, his usual dominance replaced with something quieter, reverent. His hand lifted toward your face but stopped halfway, trembling slightly. May I? You hesitated, then nodded. His fingers brushed a strand of wet hair from your cheek, his touch feather light. When you left, I thought anger would keep me sane. It didn't. It just made me realize how much of this empire was built for you. Every guard, every rule, every locked door. I thought it was protection, but it was fear. My fear. You looked at him, your voice soft but steady. Fear of losing control. Fear of losing you. The silence that followed was deafening. The storm outside had ended, but something still thundered in your chest. You can't own me, Chonguk. He nodded slowly, then let me earn you instead. You blinked, startled by the honesty in his tone. He turned away briefly, walked to the cabinet near the fireplace, opened it, and pulled out a small velvet box. He came back, opened it slowly. Inside lay the ring you had taken off the night you ran away. He held it out, voice low. This time it's not a symbol of control, it's a promise that I'll never cage you again. He stared at the ring, the glint of the diamond catching the soft sunrise. For a moment, the words seemed to pause. You think one promise fixes everything? No, but it's where I start. He knelt again, not out of power, but surrender. The image hit you harder than the first time. John Jungkook, the man fled across continents, pointing not to the world but to you. You took the ring, fingers trembling, and placed it back into his hand. Then start by standing up. I don't want a king on his knees. I want a man beside me. He looked up, a faint, broken smile ghosting over his lips. Slowly he rose. You slipped the ring onto your finger yourself this time, not because he asked, but because you chose. The morning light spilled through the windows, warm and quiet. His hand found yours, tentative at first, then firm. So where do we go from here? Wherever there is no catch. He chuckled softly, relief floating his features for the first time in weeks. Then I guess I'll have to burn a few more walls down. You smiled faintly, leaning against him as the first rays of sun touched the city. For once, there were no guards, no commands, no shadows between you, just the fragile, beautiful ache of two people learning how to love without fear.